So in the last video, I talked about how solo travel doesn't have to be lonely or boring. You're going out to a different country to explore. Obviously, there are going to be plenty of things to occupy your time if you take advantage of them. It's really is a matter of putting yourself out there and just sort of going out and seeing things and getting to know new people. And lo and behold, you're neither bored nor lonely. However, it is a valid concern, to say, okay, all of these things may be available to me, but how do I keep myself motivated in order to keep day after day during my entire trip by myself in order to, continue, maintaining a level of enthusiasm and a level of, certain kind of energy where I really do take advantage of all the things that are available to me. So and it's a good question because, we're not all we're not all easily wound up. We go through peaks and valleys. We go through different kinds of moods, different kinds of energy levels. Some of us could be traveling after being exhausted from work or from, other life responsibilities. So, how do you essentially push yourself out of the door when you travel solo? That's the big question, right? So, because when you travel solo, it's a different dynamic than if you would be traveling with someone else when it comes to doing certain things, when it comes to going out. When you're with someone else, you're going to sort of have a certain, energy where you, first of all, encourage and motivate each other to do things. And second of all, you hold each other accountable for this, for getting, for doing the things that you agreed upon doing. All right. So you can't just blow things off at the last minute without checking with your partner, and your partner might not be cool with that at all. So, whereas when you're traveling by yourself, the temptation to blow it off at the last minute never goes away, and there's really no one there to push you out of the door. You have to drag your own self out. And the other thing is that some of us, many of us, and I'm definitely speaking from experience here, we have also problems with depression as well as social anxiety, and those things definitely make it difficult for us sometimes. With depression, sometimes it's difficult to just, get out of bed, never mind go explore a beautiful new city or something like that. With social anxiety, you just kind of freeze up with, this paralyzing dread of having to interface with other human beings and with other social energies. These are all kind of debilitating disorders that really do mess with our functioning. So you can't just tell people to, get over yourself and just go do it, because it doesn't really work that way, and it's obnoxious to expect people to power through mental, disorders and illnesses on somebody else's schedule. So how do you do it on your own schedule, right? And so so what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of reasons why people hesitate to let's say, you've taken the plunge, you've planned your trip, you've gotten to your destination, you're physically at your destination, you're staying in a hotel, you're probably patting yourself on the shoulder for making it that far, and like it's really exciting. But sometimes it's actually, now that it's just you versus yourself, where you've got to fill 24 hours a day, every day, with something to do. And it's entirely sort of on you. So, how do you then proceed with, going out there and taking advantage of what this exciting new destination has to offer? Because I think sometimes it's really easy for us, especially for those of us who do have sort of, depressive or anxious tendencies. It's easy to just sort of shut yourself in and be like, all right, I'm here. Now I'm going to turn on the Netflix and I'm going to stay in. But you didn't fly halfway across the world, or you didn't, get out of your comfort zone and come to this entirely new place just to sort of, you know, shut yourself inside the tower, and just and not pay attention to anything going on outside, because while that is a worthwhile way to spend time sometimes when you're really sick of everything and everyone. There's really no reason to go across the world to do that. You can probably do that at your local motel. So if you've traveled that far and if you've had the interest to get you this far, how do you keep on going? So let's assume you actually, you've done your research and you do know that there are certain places around that you could visit. You have places of interest mapped out, but it's really that kind of sort of almost like a mental effort or a barrier, like that you're trying to cross, like a psychological barrier where you have to physically cross the threshold of leaving the hotel and then rejoining the rest of the world, right? And you're by yourself, so you have to be the one to do that. And so my advice, or at least the formula that I've come up with so far, and it's not an exact formula, but it is something that, I think is helpful to keep in mind. I really think that it's a balance between two seemingly opposite but also complementary things, right? On the one hand, you will have to engage some amount of willpower and self-discipline, right? It's just like doing anything else that sometimes it's hard going in the beginning, but you have to remind yourself why you're there, why you're doing it, that it's worthwhile. Sometimes like it's kind of like going to a class when you're in school. It could be a really interesting class and you love it, but like getting yourself over there, there's just so much effort. It's so much easier to ditch. So, how do you not ditch? Because this is, once again, like school, this is something you're really doing for yourself. So, you might as well, um, engage. So, on the one hand, you're going to need a little bit of that um, self-discipline where you're going to have to think about how you're going to organize your time, where you want to go. You're going to have to make some decisions, choose between different things to do, different itineraries, and you're going to essentially but you're going to have to also stick to at least some of those things that you planned, right? You don't have to stick to all of them, but you have to stick. Something has to happen, right? Um, so that's the one thing, is that you will have to self-motivate and then generate that enthusiasm from within by reminding yourself why you're here, why this is important to you, and what you're hoping to get out of it, or at least sort of talking positively to yourself and trying to put yourself in a better sort of emotional and mental state to make it easier to usher yourself out of the door. So, and that's the counterbalance to self-discipline is precisely this: is going easier on yourself, right? Taking it easy on yourself. And I don't mean, drop all your standards, become a bowl of jello, never do anything, and just keep patting yourself on the back for just existing. No, set standards for yourself, set schedules, do this, do that. I mean, try to maximize, what you can get out of, this wonderful exposure that you've provided for yourself. But at the same time, don't turn it into some kind of like a marathon or some kind of a perfectionist, almost job-like, um, you know, dash to achieve goals and to finalize missions. Like this is something you're doing for your own benefit. So you really need to take the pressure off. Okay? Don't crank up the pressure. Don't let that internal self-critic, get the best of you and push you into feeling bad about yourself if you one day didn't end up sticking to your schedule, or any day. But you know what I'm saying? So you're going to have to counterbalance, on the one hand, getting a grip of your energy and your time. But on the other hand, to practice that self-discipline with kindness to yourself, as opposed to being some kind of like a military drill sergeant, which is, I think, what most of us were socialized into. This is how a lot of us talk to ourselves, right? We can actually be nicer and kinder to others in the same exact situation. But when it comes to ourselves, whenever we feel like a failure, or whenever we feel like we showed weakness or we weren't at our best, we have a tendency, or many of us do at least, hopefully not everyone, and it's something that can be reprogrammed. But many of us start off with having that negative voice in our head that says, "Oh, well, you can never do anything right. Well, look at you. You're such a, you know, you're such a loser. You're so lazy. You're too not enough of this and too much of that." So, that negative self-talk needs to go, and it needs to be replaced with a much nicer, more loving, and more caring self-talk, which at the end of the day will hopefully be much more motivating than, barking orders at yourself. Okay, you're on vacation, or you're on a trip to, for whatever reason that you're taking this time off to be by yourself and to travel. It's certainly not to keep punishing yourself on the inside, right? It's certainly not to bring all those pressures that maybe you're trying to leave behind, certainly not bringing them with you in the form of your own worst self-critic. Um, so I think it's good to hold ourselves up to standards, but I think that there's a right and a wrong way to do that. And here's what I do, right? When things become really hard going for me, and it does happen, and especially you guys, sometimes I spend months on the road, right? And when you're traveling for months and the scene is changing every couple of days, you get into these like ups and downs, and it just becomes regular life. You're not always chipper. You're not always in explore mode or vacation mood, or interact with everybody and everything mood. Sometimes you want to withdraw and kind of. So first of all, assess, how much time do I have? Maybe I can afford to take a day or two off and just swing in a hammock and read a book, or do absolutely nothing whatsoever. Sometimes that's useful as well. So first of all, assess, and second of all, if you decide that you really do want to push yourself out of the door, but you're just having, it's really hard going, right? Sometimes it's the most difficult part, especially when you're dealing with things like depression and anxiety. Sometimes it's literally the physical act of crossing that threshold and leaving the hotel. That is the hardest part of getting going. After you walked out of there, you just kind of like, all right, well, I'm physically moving and the scenery has changed and I'm breathing in some kind of air, hopefully fresh. And like, sometimes your endorphins will kind of start, kind of firing and popping in there, and it's not necessarily gonna totally get you out of the funk that you were in, but you're going to still feel a shift in perspective and a shift in mood, and hopefully that's going to get your momentum going. And after that, I really, sometimes for me, it's like it's telling myself to put one foot in front of the other. It really, there is a lot of wisdom in that one step at a time attitude. At least in when feeling overwhelmed by trying to get too much done, or maybe just not knowing where to start. So one of the things that I do is, I travel with a guidebook, and I'll look up any number of sort of reachable destinations within the area of where I'm staying, that's reachable within a day, and then I will just set myself like a trajectory. I will say, okay, I'm going to such and such museum on the other side of the city, or I'm going to go for this Central City Plaza that I definitely got to check out while I'm here. But the thing is, like, you really do that more as a psychological incentive to just provide yourself with a purpose for the day. You're like, okay, well, now we have direction. When I talk to myself, I frequently say we, because there's definitely more than one person up in there yakking up a storm. So sometimes there's like a whole group discussion happening. So I have to, and first of all, don't judge me. I'm a writer, and I'm supposed to have a crowd of disagreeing individuals up in there. But jokes aside, we all have that. I'm pretty sure we all have different facets of our personalities duking it out in our heads. So, might as well talk to them, right? Might as well try to get them to cooperate. So that's what I do. I actually I do this thing where I talk to myself as if I'm a small child and I'm trying to compel the small child to leave the house and try something new. And I'm like, listen, it's okay. We're already here, right? There's nothing to lose. All you have to do is, take a shower, put on some pants, grab, gather up your things, open the door, one foot in front of the other, walk outside. We're going to this plaza, whether we take an hour to get there or the rest of the day, it's going to be, there's absolutely no directive on why we're going there, what we're going to do there, how we're going to get there. We're just taking a walk outside and we know which direction to go in. And from that point on, drink some coffee, stop to take some pictures, stop to smell some flowers, all of that, go stop to chat to some street vendor. So this is just really a device to get yourself out of the door with the lowest pressure, lowest stake situation possible. Sort of reminding yourself, hey, there's no one here to judge you. There's no one here to keep breathing down your neck and rushing you to get anywhere and judging you for the rest of the day on how you perform. There's no performance here. This is just us. you know, our precious. It's like a Golem Smeagol thing. It's like referring to us as us. Um, but anyway, so you show yourself that patience and that kindness, and you try to cajole yourself out of the door. And again, once you're out there, maybe you get a little you get a little pep in your step after a while, and the next thing you know, you're kind of like feeling all right, and the next thing you know, you're breathing and you're remembering that, hey, I'm in a foreign country and I'm here to like check stuff out and explore things and meet new people. Like you start getting into it and you start feeling happy. And once again, I'm not saying that anytime you feel anxious or depressed, all you have to do is push yourself out the door and everything's gonna just magically change for you. But I think many people who experience this know that a lot of it is about crossing a certain psychological threshold. And once you change up the scenery, you might be able to sort of like, it's not like flipping a switch, but maybe it's more like changing the record. There's different modes that you can go into where you actually do feel better sometimes. And here's the thing, if you don't feel better after a few minutes, if you're having a panic attack, or if you're feeling like, oh, this is just not working out, retreat and go back. This is another thing I say to myself. I'm like, hey, all we got to do is step out there and put one foot in front of the other. If we hate it, if it just becomes unbearable, we can always come back here at any time. There's no pressure and there's no schedule. So just chill. I tell myself, just chill out and take it really one step at a time. And for me, it helps because I do have to say I can be very hard going sometimes. It is that self-motivation. It's not like a perpetual motion machine. Sometimes you need a little bit of a budge, but there's no one there to budge you. So you create that budge for yourself by relying on these kinds of sort of psychological, they're not tricks or games. They're just approaches to yourself that aren't draconian, where you're not being mean to yourself, but you're being nice and forgiving and understanding and patient with yourself. And it helps. Okay, it helps. It gets me out of the door. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. I will continue making more videos. And please go to my website, the website of the guidebook that I'm writing, in which I share so many more other sort of little tweaky kind of insights about not just how to travel, how to get going, how to organize these things, but also, how to maintain yourself, how to react to different situations, um, how to sort of how to give back, how to become more mindful of yourself as well as the rest of the world, as well as your role in this world. So there are many, many topics covered in this travel guide. It will be hopefully coming out very soon. And in the meanwhile, please go to hacksolotravel.com. That's the name of the guidebook. And sign up for updates and blog posts and other stuff. And find me on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube, all under at Hack Solo Travel. So until next time, happy traveling. Later.